Combining like terms, adding, subtracting real numbers. Each term or real number should be simplified to where there's only one sign associated with that term or real number. So let's review sign combinations, because a lot of times I see students, they'll try to do plus a negative or minus a positive or minus a negative. We don't need two signs. That makes things more complicated. Let's simplify down to one sign and make things less complicated. So plus a positive, okay, and we're going to get in a little bit of multiplying here, but plus a positive, you multiply two positives, you get a positive, okay? You plus a positive, you get a positive. If you add a negative number, that's really like subtracting. That's a minus sign. If you add a negative, that's like a positive times a negative. Think back when you learned that. If you subtract a positive, that's the same thing, just in reverse. You're subtracting a positive number, so you're really subtracting. So there's no need to have plus a positive, plus a negative, minus a positive, or even minus a negative. If you subtract a negative number, that's the same thing as adding that number. So we're going to talk about these things in terms of one sign. So it's either 3 plus 7 or 3 minus 7, not 3 plus a negative 7 or 3 minus a negative 7. We don't want two signs. We want one sign. One sign between each number. We're going to get that down to one sign, okay? Once you've simplified each term to one sign, you're ready to continue, and these are the rules that you will always use, whether they're real numbers or terms or something else. If the signs are the same, meaning they're both positive or both negative, you add the values and keep the sign. So when I say the values, I'm talking about absolute value where, you don't worry about the sign. Like if you have negative 7 and negative 8, they're both negative, so you add 7 and 8, that's 15, and keep it negative. So if they're both the same, both positive or both negative, then you add the values and keep the sign. If they are different signs, one is positive and one is negative, it doesn't matter which one. You subtract the values and keep the sign of the larger one. So if you have negative 8 plus 7, the 8 is negative, the 7 is positive. I don't care if there's a plus between them. The signs are different, so you subtract. 8 minus 7 is 1. And what's bigger, 8 or 7? When I say bigger number, I mean without the sign attached. So the bigger one is 8, and it's negative, so that's negative 1. And we'll see this in some examples here. Okay? So here, 5 plus negative 2. Again, we don't want two signs. That's what I mean by simplify it down to one sign. We don't want two signs here. So what I want you to do is I want you to say, okay, I have a 5 and a 2. What kind of 5 do I have? Well, there's nothing out front to change it, so it stays positive. And then what does plus a negative 2 become? Well, plus a negative really means minus. So now we just have 5 minus 2. And you learned that in, I don't know, maybe before you went to school, but at least in first grade or something, right? You learned 5 minus 2. If you have 5 and you take 2 away, you get what? 3. But again, you know this, but the signs are different. You have a positive and a negative. If you have a positive and a negative, the rule was subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3, and keep the sign of the larger number. 5 is bigger than 2, and it's positive, so the 3 is positive. You don't think about this one that way, but that's what you're doing. Okay? So let's look at the next one. We have a 3 and a 4. I don't like the two signs here, so I'm going to rewrite it. Don't like the two signs. So this 3 is negative. Okay, this 3 is negative, and then plus a negative is also a negative. Okay, that means subtract. Okay, that means subtract. So we have negative 3 minus 4. The signs are negative and negative. Is that the same or different? That's the same. If they are the same sign, what do? I say 3 plus 4 is 7, and keep them whatever sign they both are. They're both negative, so keep that negative. Okay. The other way I think about this is like in terms of money. If negative is owing money and positive is getting money, that's what I think anyway. All right. So then if I owe $3 and then I borrow 4 more, now I owe what? $7, right? You added it together, but you kept it on the negative side of borrow. I owe the money. Okay. So, but if the signs are the same, you add them, keep the sign. So here they're both negative. You add 3 and 4 together, get 7, and keep that 7 negative. What about 17 minus 3? 17 minus 3. So here, again, this is something you've done since who knows when, okay? Longer than you can remember probably. But 17 minus 3, there's a positive and a negative. So what do? You subtract. 17 minus 3 is 14. The sign of the larger number, 17, is positive, so the 14 is positive. Now, again, it's one sign, so we don't write that plus sign there. The answer is just 14. But what if we turn it around to 3 minus 17? Well, look, it's the same thing. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's a positive number and a negative number, which means I subtract. What is 17 minus 3? 14. And I know you're screaming at the screen, it's negative, okay? But look, I said subtract. 17 minus 3 is 14. But which one's larger now? 17 is larger, and it's negative. So then my answer down here is going to be negative. So I'll put me a negative sign right there. So negative 14, okay? Always break it down and make it this simple, and it works this way every time. One sign between each number, same signs, add, keep the sign, different sign, subtract, take the sign the larger. So let's look at negative 7 plus negative 3. Again, we have a 7 and a 3. Nothing to change that negative in front of that 7. Here, plus a negative means what? Minus. So now we have a negative 7 and a negative 3. We've simplified it to one sign for each value, the 7 and the 3. So each term has just one sign associated with it. Are they the same or different? They're the same signs, right? So when they're the same signs, we have a negative and a negative. What do we do with that? We add them. 7 plus 3 is 10, and then we do what? Keep it negative. So negative 10. Negative 10. And then I threw a decimal in here. Don't let that throw you off. Same thing. Okay? So what do we have? We have a 1.8, and we have a what? 6.1. And notice I'm writing them down every time without a sign there anywhere. And then I'm go back and say, okay, do I keep the sign or change it? What do I do with it? So here, there's nothing to change that negative, so we bring it down. It's negative 1.8. And then plus a negative means what? That means minus. Plus a negative means minus. So negative 1.8 minus 6.1. So again, those signs are the same or different. They're both negative. They're the same. So you add. You have 1.8 and 6.1. Remember, when you add decimals, you line them up. Line the decimals up. Not the first digit, not the last digit. You line the decimals up. This one so happens to be one digit on each side of the decimal. You add them up. 8 plus 1 is 9. Keep your decimal there. 1 plus 6 is 7. There was nothing to carry or anything like that. So this is 7.9, except wait a minute. I added them in a thought cloud. I'll put this in a thought cloud. All right, I love thought clouds because that means I did some part of the problem, but I didn't finish it. But it helped me think about how to get to the answer. So I added them to get 7.9, but wait a minute. When I'm combining like terms and I choose to add them, that meant the sign was the same, so I keep that sign. So negative 7.9. Negative 7.9. All right, so what about negative 4 and then minus the negative 19? Again, I see two signs, and I go, nope, don't want two signs. Two signs, too complicated. We want one sign. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to say 4 and 19. The 4 doesn't change. It's negative. And what is minus a negative? Minus a negative really means plus. So I don't care that there's a plus sign between those two. I look at the 4 and it's negative. I look at the 19 and it's positive. Those are different signs. So what do I do when I have different signs? I subtract. 19 minus 4 is 15. And then which one is larger? 19. 19 has a plus sign, so guess what the answer is? It's plus. So I don't write the plus in there, right? It's there, but I don't write it. So 15 is the final answer. It's understood to be positive, and it's not the only term there. And the next one, negative 29 minus 23. Now, do I need to rewrite this one? No. There's only one sign with each number. I only rewrite it when there's multiple signs with a number or a term. So here, this one's already ready to go. They're both negative, so what do? I add them together. 29 plus 23. So look, again, you can do that in your head, but I'll do 20 plus 20 is 40, and then I'll do 9 plus 3 is 12. 40 and 12 is 52. So I have 52, and then if they're both negative, keep it negative. All right? Keep it negative. So let's keep looking at some of these as we combine them. Oh boy, we get into a fraction here. Look, don't let that scare you. Don't let that scare you. We've dealt fractions already. Just hang in there. If you need some help with it, go back and look at adding, subtracting fractions with an LCD. That's what this one is. When we get down here to this one, this means you have to find the LCD, and I have videos for that as well. So go back and watch those if you need to. So here, again, we have two signs. I don't want two signs, so I'm going to say I have a 7/9 and I have a 2/9. The 7/9 is negative. There's nothing to change that. And then plus a minus 2/9 means negative. Okay? So a negative and a negative, they're the same sign. So how do I add fractions? I'm going to add these, right? 7 and 2 get added. They're in the numerator, the top. When you add or subtract fractions, they have to have the same denominator. You can't do it. And you keep that denominator. So we're going to keep this over 9. And we're going to say, okay, we keep it over 9, and we're going to say negative 7 minus 2. So then what do we do with that? They're same signs, so we add them. 7 plus 2 is 9, and we keep it negative, and we divide that by 9. So that's negative 9 divided by 9. Can that simplify? Yep. Negative 9 over 9 becomes what? Negative 1. Negative 1. So I'm going to keep going over here with negative 4 plus 2. Again, do I need to simplify or write this down any other way? No. There's one sign for this one sign for this one. I'm ready to go ahead and move on. So do I add or subtract the 4 and the 2? Don't say you don't know. Look at it. What? Negative 4, right? Positive 2. There you go. Their signs are different. When they're different, what do? You subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2, and you take the sign of the larger. Here's the sign of the larger. It goes in the answer. Negative 2. All right, negative 2 there. And then we have 4 plus a negative 12, and here I see 2 signs, the old dreaded 2 signs. Don't ever introduce 2 signs into a problem. You want to get it from 2 signs down to 1 sign, okay? So here we have 2 signs. Let's get rid of it. Get a 4 and a 12. What kind of 4 do I have? Well, it stays positive right here. It stays positive. And then plus a negative we said was minus. So that's 4 minus 12. So do I add the 4 and the 12 or subtract them? Don't worry about what signs in between them. Look at the relationship of the signs. One of them is positive, the other is negative, so I subtract. It doesn't have anything to do with the sign in between them. So here the 4 is positive, the 12 is negative, so 12 minus 4 is 8, and the larger one is 12, so the answer is what? 8. When you subtract, you always take the sign of the larger number when you're combining like terms. All right? And when I say combining like terms, I'm talking about adding and subtracting. And you will also hear me say often, when you combine like terms, you get a like term. If you combine 2 integers, you get an integer. If you combine 2 fractions, you might get a fraction. We got 9 over 9 with a negative sign, but we were able to simplify it. But what I really mean is if you combine 2 x's, you get an x. Now, we'll do that in the next video, all right? But you hear me say it all the time. When you combine like terms, you get a like term. So you won't change what makes it like. So here, this one, you have a 9/10. And you have a 1/5. All right, and you have plus a negative. That's why I rewrote it. I don't like plus a negative. I want one sign to make that minus. Now here, can I just put the numerators together and put it over something? Not like it is, because I need a common denominator. And if you remember, we start with the largest, which is 10, and we say, does 5 divide into 10? Yes, it does. And when it does, that means my LCD here is going to be 10. So we're going to come out here and say, okay, this is going to be 9 over 10. And by the way, what do I multiply by 10 to get 10? Nothing. It's already there. So don't multiply 9/10 by anything. If you want to, you could put 1 over 1, but that's too much. Okay? Then you have minus 1/5, and I need to multiply the 1/5 times something, because 5 is not already 10. So what do I multiply by 5 to get 10? 2. And whatever I put in the bottom or denominator, I have to put in the top of the numerator. So 2 over 2. So this is going to be 9/10 minus 1/5 times 2 over 2. So this is going to be 9/10 minus, multiply straight across, 2 and 10. So 2 over 10. Now look, I don't want you to look at this and go, oh, those cross out. Those divide out. You want to use the word cancel, but that doesn't even cancel. Okay? It's what you were taught. That's what books used to say. They don't say that anymore, because it's not what it is. It divides out. But no, don't divide it out. That defeats the purpose. You're trying to get an equivalent fraction to 1/5 that has the denominator of 10, so it's 2 over 10. Leave it that way. Now you have a common denominator of 10, and I can come in here and go, okay, this is going to be 9 minus 2 over 10. And what does 9 minus 2 give me? 7, right? So it's going to be 7/10. And can I simplify that? The answer is no. So I'm done at 7/10 there, all right? Done at 7 over 10, or 7/10. So here's another one, negative 5/8 plus negative 2/3. So again, 2 signs. I don't like the 2 signs. So we're going to say a 5/8 and a 2/3. Negative 5/8, that doesn't change. Plus a negative is minus. So it's going to be minus 2/3. look, I'm not ready to talk about whether I add or subtract yet, because I know I'm adding or subtracting. I'm doing one or the other. But what do I need? What must I have in terms of fractions? I must have a common denominator. A common denominator. So here, my LCD is, let's see, does 3 divide into 8? No. So then remember, I take multiples of 8, and then I go to 16. Does 3 go into 16? No. Okay, 8, 16, 24. Does 3 go into 24? Yes. 3 is the only other denominator, so then my LCD is 24. So then I need to go, okay, neither one of these are 24, so I got to multiply both of them by something. So I'm going to come out here and say, okay, this is negative 5/8 times something minus 2/3 times something, okay? What is it I need to multiply by? Well, what do I multiply by 8 to get 24? 3. So it's 3 over 3. It doesn't have anything to do with this being a 3. It just happens to work that way on this one. It's always, what do you multiply by the current denominator to get the LCD? In this case, it's 3. Whatever you do in the bottom, you got to do in the top, denominator, numerator. So then what do I multiply by 3 to get 24? 8. Okay? 8. So this is going to be an 8 down here, and it's got to be an 8 in the numerator up top. So then I go to multiplying. Don't go to simplifying here, right? You're trying to get equivalent fractions with the same denominator. So multiply. 5 times 3 is 15. This is 15 over 24, right? And guess what's out front? A negative, so don't forget that's there. Negative. And then we have a minus. Bring it down. There's nothing else to change that minus, so minus, put it equals here. 2 times 8 is what? 16 over 3 times 8 is what? 24. So then I have a common denominator now, so now I'm going to put this all over 24, and I have a negative 15 and a negative 16. So then I come back and say, okay, so what do I do really here? What do I really do? Well, these signs are the same, so guess what? I add them. So I have 24, and then 15 plus 16 is 31, and it's negative. Okay? Now, this is a legitimate answer. It's one fraction, one term, or over one term, 31 over 64. I'm sorry, 31 over 24. Okay? I want to ask myself, does 31 and 24 have anything in common? Can I divide out? And the answer is no, I can't. So, but when I have one term over one term, it typically we write the negative sign out front. Negative 31 over 24. Now, if you were in my class, okay, if you were in my class, say introductory or beginning algebra, I'm not going to count off for that. If you're in college algebra, I probably still won't count off, but I might say, hey, bring that negative out front. It just looks better. It's, whatever, but it's not wrong to be the other way. That's why I won't count off. I'm going to count off for something that's right, unless I tell you to do a specific thing and you don't follow directions, okay? But here, that negative sign can stay in the numerator, but many times we bring it out in front of the fraction. But I wanted to point out those are the same thing. This answer or that answer there is the same thing. Same thing, okay? One or the other. Let me fix that R and or because that's pretty bad, okay? So those are the same thing. I just typically bring that negative out front when it's a single term over a single term. All right, so here's 60 plus a negative 40. There it is. I don't even need to see anything else to know I need to rewrite this, okay? So right now I'm going to come down here and say, okay, I have a 60, I have a 40, I have a 20, and I have a 35. My 60 is positive, so keep it positive. Then plus a negative is what? Really minus, so minus 40. Again, plus a negative is really minus, so minus 20. And then plus 35. So just bring that plus down. There's nothing here to change, so just bring that plus down. Okay? Bring that plus down. So here, when you add or subtract, you can do that in any order you wish. So what I'm going to do is just start with the first two terms and put them together. And then we'll put these two terms together. So 60 minus 40 is what? 20, right? The signs are different. 60 is positive, 40 is negative. Subtract, 60 minus 40 is 20, and take the sign of the larger. 60 is positive, 20 is positive. Then we come over here. What do we do with these two terms? The signs are different. I don't care about the plus between them. They're different. So we subtract. So 35 minus 20 is 15. And then I say, okay, what kind of sign is it? Well, which one's bigger? 35. And it's positive. So my 15 is positive. So then I have 20 plus 15. If I put those together, that's what? 35. 35. And then we have another more fractions here, but look, don't fret. And what I am going to do, because I have fractions, I'm going to take and rearrange this to where these two terms are beside each other and these two terms are beside each other. At the same time, looking at plus a negative and plus a negative, okay? So I'm going to come out here and I'm going to say, okay, I have a 40, I have a 15, I have an 11/8, and I have a 13/8, okay? So what I did was I just swapped the middle terms out so that, swap these two terms so that my integers would be beside each other and my fractions would be beside each other. And that way, a little easier to combine, I think, the same type things. So my 40 stays negative. My 15, there's nothing to change that, so keep it plus 15. We said this plus or minus meant what? Negative. Again, plus or minus means what? Negative. So this is going to be, what am I going to do when I combine those two terms? Add or subtract? That's right, subtract, because the 40 is negative and the 15 is positive. I don't care there's a plus between there. They're different signs. So 40 minus 15 is 25, and 40 is larger, so it's negative. Negative 25. And then I'm going to come over here and say, okay, put these two things together. The good thing is there's already a common denominator of 8. There's already a common denominator of 8. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write my negative 11 minus 13 up here, and if I do that, I'd have to do something out here. I'm going to add it, because I kept my signs in the fraction. Or, better yet, if you don't like that, we can do this. We can just say, you know what? I'm gonna take this up here in a thought cloud and figure it out, okay? I'm going to say this is negative 11 minus 13 over 8. I'm going to figure out what this is, and then I'm going to tack it on right after the negative 25. So here's a thought cloud. I love thought clouds. It's part of the problem here, but it's not the whole thing. But I can save myself several steps down here by doing this fraction in a thought cloud. So this is still going to be over 8. I add them together. 11 plus 13 is 24, and it stays negative. Does 24 divide by 8? Does 8 go into 24? It sure does. How many times? 3. Goes into it 3 times. So we're going to say this is 1 and 3. So this becomes, don't forget this negative sign. This becomes a negative 3 over 1, but we don't ever answer over 1. We put negative 3. So then guess what I do? I take this negative 3 and just tack it on right here. Minus 3. All of this became negative 3 based on this thought cloud up here. So now I have negative 25 minus 3, right? What do I do when they're both negative? I add those together and get 28 and do what? Keep it negative. Keep it negative. All right, what about negative 77 minus negative 77? Well, hang on. I have a 77 and a 77. This first one doesn't change. It stays negative. The second one, what does minus and negative mean? It means plus. So what do I do with those two 77s? Do I add them or subtract them? I know there's a plus between them, but that does not mean add. Okay? The signs are different, so you subtract them. What is 77 minus 77? It's 0. And 0, is 0 positive or negative? No. So don't worry about a sign here. You would take the sign of the larger one, but 77 is the same size as 77. So since neither sign is larger, you don't write down either sign. Well, that's neat, right? So 0, that actually cancels. The 77 and negative 77 cancel. They go to 0. That is in books now. Okay. So then 2 over 9 minus 5 over 9. Again, I have an LCD. My LCD is already there of 9, right? So this is going to be over 9, and we have a 2 and a 5. The 2 is positive, right? And the 5 is negative. So 2 minus 5 over 9. So when I look at this, I say, okay, I'm going to have this thing over 9, and I need to figure out what this is. Well, look, what do I do with that? Do I add them or subtract them? Not because there's a minus sign between it, but because the 2 is positive and the 5 is negative. So 2 minus 5, 5 minus 2 is 3. The bigger number 5 is negative, so negative 3. Then I say, okay, can I simplify 3 over 9? Well, 3 goes into 3 once and 9 3 times, so this becomes what? Negative 1/3. Or you could have written it negative 1 over 3, okay? So, again, when it's just a negative sign, I typically bring the negative out front. I guess let me let's do this. I'll keep it the negative up here to start with. Negative 1/3 or negative 1/3. And then negative 5/9 minus 2/9. Again, the LCD is already here. It is 9. So we're going to keep it over 9. We're going to have 9, and then we have a 5 and a 2, and both of them are negative. So what do we do when they're both negative? Well, we come down here and we say we have over 9, and then they're the same, so we add them together. 5 and 2 is 7, and keep it negative. So that answer is negative 7/9. Or you guessed it, I'm going to bring that negative out front. Negative 7/9. Negative 7/9. So then 4/5 minus 1/10. Here, my LCD is not, I don't already have one, right? So what is my LCD? Well, the first thing I do is look at the largest one, 10. Does 5, the only other denominator, divide into 10? And the answer is yes. So then my LCD is 10. And when that's the case, remember one of your fractions, that 10 one won't change there, right? It already has the LCD. So I'm going to multiply 4/5 times something because, right, this 5 is not already 10. And then minus 1/10. Since this 10 is already 10, I don't need to do anything over here with that, right? So what do I multiply by 5 to get 10? 2. So whatever I put in the denominator, I put in the top, the numerator. So that's going to be what? That's going to be 4 times 2 is 8. 8 over 10, right? 8 over 10 minus 1 over 10. So then we accomplished our goal of getting everything over 10. And then the numerator now becomes what? 8 minus 1, which is 7 over 10. And then we say, can this simplify any? And the answer is no. 7 over 10 does not simplify. So then you are done there at 7/10. So we have 7.5 minus 4.3. So the signs are different. And so what I'm going to do with decimals, again, I'm going to come out here in a thought cloud and say, okay, 7.5 and 4.3. Remember, we line our decimals up. And we subtract here, right? The signs are different. We're subtracting. Doesn't matter which one's larger. We're still subtracting. Then we keep the sign of the larger. So 5 minus 3 is 2. Keep the decimal there. There was nothing to borrow or anything there. We just go to 7 minus 4 is 3. So we get 3.2. And this one was larger and positive, so the 3.2 stays positive. So 3.2 is our final answer there on that one. 2.3 minus a negative 2.3. Again, what does minus a negative mean? It means plus. So this is going to be 2.3 plus 2.3. So be careful. Don't tell me that's 0, right? You're not really subtracting. Now both signs are positive, so what do? You add it. So again, in a thought cloud, I'm going to come out to the side and say, okay, 2.3 and 2.3 added together. That's 6. There's nothing to carry over with a 4. So then this is 4.6, and if you add them, you keep the sign, so they're positive. That's a positive 4.6. Then we have 8 minus 3 plus 5 minus 14. So again, there's not two signs in here, so you're ready just to start simplifying. So I'm going to take 8 minus 3, and that's going to give me what? Well, I subtract. 8 minus 3 is 5, and 8's larger, so it's positive. Then I'm going to combine these two terms here, plus 5 minus 14. Again, I subtract. 14 minus 5 is 9. 14 minus 5 is 9. And then I look, say, which one's larger? 14. It's negative, so my 9 must be what? Negative. And then I come back and say, okay, what do I do with those two terms? Well, the 5 is positive, the 9 is negative, so you subtract. 9 minus 5 is what? 4. And then the 9 is larger, so my 4 is negative, and now you've had it simplified. Negative 4. Negative 4. And the next one has two signs right here. So I'm going to write it down again. I'm going to say, okay, this is going to be a 5, a 2, a 7, and a 10. And the 5, the 7, and the 10 don't change. Negative 5, positive 7, negative 10. But minus a negative 2 becomes what? Plus 2. Plus 2. Okay, what do? Negative 5 plus 2. The signs are different. 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 is larger, so negative 3. Then I come over here and say, okay, what about this one? Put those together, and I get what? 7 and 10 are different signs, so 10 minus 7 is 3. And then 10 is larger, so that's negative. So I have a negative 3 minus 3. Now be careful, don't tell me that's 0. Right? They're both negative, so you add them together, you get 6, and you keep it what? Negative. So that's negative 6. Negative 6. So 3 minus 5/4, and then minus a negative. I have minus a negative, which is really plus. So what I want to do is rewrite this. I want to say, okay, this is really 3, and then minus 5/4, and then minus, nope, we said that was plus 7/8, right? Because minus a negative is positive. Fix this just a smidgen here. Okay. So what is my LCD? Well, what's my largest denominator? I have 4, 8, and then be careful. Don't tell me 3 is a denominator. 3 is really over 1. We don't answer it that way, but we think about it as, oh, wait a minute, that whole number, that integer is over 1. So that doesn't add or take away from my LCD. So 8, does 4 go into 8? Yes, and of course 1 does. So 8 is my LCD. So when I get ready to do this, I have to come down here and say, okay, 3 times something, because look, this is over 1 and 1 is not 8, so I got to multiply by something. And then minus 5/4, and again, I have to multiply by something because 4 is not already 8. And then plus 7/8. But guess what? 8's already 8, so I don't have to multiply by anything here. So I come in here and say, okay, 3 is really over 1. It's really over 1. So what do I multiply by 1 to get 8? Well, the whole thing, I got to go 8 over 8, right? Whatever I put in the bottom, I got to put in the top. 8 over 8. Here, the next one, what do I multiply by 4 to get 8? 2. So if I put a 2 in the denominator, I got to put a 2 in the numerator. And then over here, the last one is already over 8. There's nothing to multiply by. So we have, this is going to be 3 times 8 is 24, so it's going to be 24 over 8. And again, don't simplify that. You're trying to get an equivalent fraction of 3 over 8. So 24 over 8 does simplify to 3, but leave it 24 over 8 so that everything's over 8. Then we have minus, we have 5 times 2 is 10, over 4 times 2 is 8. Again, don't simplify it, leave it right there. Plus 7 over 8. Now we're ready to put this together. It's all going to be over 8. I'm going to come over here, 8, and it's going to be 24 minus 10 plus 7. So what I'm going to do is put this together here and get 24 minus 10 is 14. Is that right? So that's going to be 14 plus 7 over 8. And then finally I'm going to take the 14 plus the 7 and get what? 21. So it's going to be 21 over 8. And then I ask myself, is there any way to simplify or divide 8 into 21? Or anything that goes into both of those? And the answer is no. There's nothing that divides into both of those. So 21 over 8, I know it's an improper fraction. It's a beautiful answer. In algebra, remember, you want to leave your improper fractions because they're easier to deal with typically in algebra. Now, if you have a teacher, instructor, professor, whatever, that wants you to change that to 2 and 5/8, you do that. Right? 8 goes into 21 twice with 5 left over. 2 and 5/8 is the mixed number. I don't want you to do that. But if your instructor, teacher, professor does, then you do what they want you to do. You're in their class. Okay? So I hope this helps with combining like terms.